get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, all right? And we're going to stand up, and then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down, all right? And on the way up, we're going to take your other kneecap, and we're going to get up, and then it's going to take 3 shots to get us down.
Well, hi there, boys and girls. Welcome aboard to another exciting episode of Kneecaps for Breakfast. Vince Progard, that's me. Happy to be joined, as always, by my longtime partner in crime, Phil Byrne. And Phil, in the absolute understatement of the millennium, I apologize for being a few days late on this because I was just a bit, again, understatement here, under the weather. So thank you for your flexibility and joining me here for this episode just a couple days late, but again, we try and keep our weeks off to a minimum here on the old kneecaps.
Well, you know what, Vince? There's no need to apologize. Listen, we're fortunate to be able to do this. We try to do a show each and every week, whether it's Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. It hits your preferred podcast feed. We just want to give you a show, so this time of year too, like, yes, there is still technically football taking place, but our beloved Lions, they obviously haven't played in a while now, so no harm, no foul in taking a couple nights off here.
Yeah, absolutely. And this, just for full disclosure, is not going to be a very content-laden episode here. We just want to be able to give you something to wet your whistle until next week when we're able to get back into it again. I'm on the far, luckily, back end of dealing with something vicious that went through my household. Phil, I know you're fighting a little something of your own over there, so
yeah,
we're not going to really reinvent the wheel as far as this goes, and there's really not a whole lot of Lions-focused things to get in on. I will want to talk with you about some Lions-related activities before we start to get into the Super Bowl, and that's going to be kind of what we lead off with here on this episode, Phil, is what in the blue heck is going on in the Big Apple? So we all know that Ben Johnson took the nearby job, stayed in the division, took the Chicago Bears head coaching job, and by and large, winning the division, going from worst to first, and everything like that, despite losing to the Lions twice during the regular season. The Bears really, by and large, exceeded all expectations, won a playoff game in the first round, ended up bowing out gracefully to the L.A. Rams, but it was by and large a successful year-one campaign for former Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson. The other direction of the fork in the road was, what does former defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn do? Took a jet out to the Big Apple and took the Jets head coaching job, no pun intended on the jet out to the Big Apple. And as a wise man once said, as good as Ben Johnson does with the Bears, that's how as bad Aaron Glenn is with the Jets. It has not been a good run, Phil, for Aaron Glenn. 3-14 in his first season at the helm of the Jets. And how does he respond to the way the season ends? ... Well, let's sit around and wait for a week, almost 2 weeks, and then go and weed whack half of your coaching staff, basically canning everybody except yourself. Phil, how can this possibly wind up successfully for Aaron Glenn as he heads into just his second year on the job with the Jets?
It can't. Like, the only way that I would see that be a net positive is if Aaron Glenn decided to make these moves late to go ahead and get guys that were still coaching and maybe weren't coordinators with the teams that are still around or were in the championship round, but promote them to coordinators. I don't think that's the case because I don't think Aaron Glenn is connected in the so-called coaching trees or anything like that with obviously the 2 teams that remain or really any of the Final Four, to where he would have had some coaches left. These are decisions that should have been made a long time ago, and by a long time ago, I do not even mean week 18 at the end of the season. You knew where the Jets were and where they were building or not building to by probably about week 10. I think he should have instinctually realized if he had to make a change, should have happened then. I guess the other part of this too is it's not like the Jets have been you know, a team that has had great ownership with Woody Johnson there. So I could also see maybe there was some hesitation to get rid of some of these coaches if Aaron Glenn decided that he wanted to do it after the season, the pushback, and they had to have those internal conversations. That's the only bit of credit that I will give Aaron Glenn here in this conversation, because otherwise, by all optics, it looks like this took place way too late. The candidates have pretty much been shaken out. All the head coaching positions have now been filled. Those guys are getting their staffs assembled. And quite frankly, who wants to go into possibly a lame duck year or two with Aaron Glenn on his coaching staff instead of taking one of these other openings?
Yeah, and he did it half right because he let go of his defensive coordinator, Steve Wilkes, whom he, I believe, handpicked for the job at like the week 14 or week 15 mark, and still,
Yeah.
to my knowledge, hasn't replaced anybody with it. I think Glenn called the defensive plays the final 3-4 games of the season. I don't know if he intends on doing that moving forward or what, but it was the rest of the coaching staff that really didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. We remember that former passing game coordinator for the Lions, Tanner Engstrand, a guy who some in Lions circles thought would maybe be a guy who had a leg up on the competition to be the Lions offensive coordinator instead of going with John Morton a season ago. He followed Aaron Glenn to the Jets, was the play caller for the Jets, lasted the entire season. They didn't do anything amazing on offense, which isn't a super surprise if you ask me, but even still, about 2 weeks after the season ended, he was clipped along with a whole bunch of other assistants on the staff. And I remember you mentioned, Phil, maybe a benefit of the doubt possibility that maybe he was waiting for things to maybe shake out fully on the coaching carousel as it spins around. Well, the three big finalists for the offensive coordinator job are guys that would have all been available had he done this on Black Monday. I think he brought in Frank Reich. I think he brought in the corpse of Daryl Bevel. I didn't even know this guy was still in coaching. And the third guy that they brought in escapes me at this point. None of those are going to be
Was
anything
it
that's going to
what,
amaze
Jim Bob
anybody.
Cooter? Come on,
No, it was
you know?
Greg Roman. No, it was Greg Roman from.
Okay.
He was let go by the Chargers at the end of the season. He'd been around the league a long time. Yeah, so Greg Roman was the third. They would have all been available had Aaron Glenn have done this shakeup right away. So the whole waiting 2 weeks and then figuring out doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And you have to keep in mind that, hey, optically, this is a coaching staff that you let go that primarily was built in your image, hand built by you. So, what does that say about you and your ability to be able to formulate a coaching staff and your ability to be a leader of coaches? You hear all the time about being a leader of players. You have to be a leader of coaches as a head coach, too. And I think that's something that kind of gets tossed aside when you're a career long position coach and a career long coordinator. That's all part of the very bottom of the application where it says other duties as assigned, something that is oftentimes pretty heavily overlooked.
Absolutely. And that's the part that I think we knew he was a pretty strong presence within the Dan Campbell regime in Allen Park, but it seems like everything that has happened in New York has been incredibly disjointed. I think he's at a point too where, he's kind of become enemies with the New York media as well, which
Who
I'm not
doesn't,
saying
though?
you need I'm not saying you need to have them on their side, but they're very much like you basically need to win or we're not going to give you any benefit of the doubt.
Of
So
course.
it just really just adds more fuel to the fire, and I think he's really in a tough spot here. So yeah, a couple of these coaches have obviously been released from being with the Jets. Lions, I think, have filled a good portion of their coaching staff. I don't think there's been too many guys that have left yet. So if any of these guys, that left the Lions to go to the Jets with Aaron Glenn, were out there, they're probably just coming back in like an analyst role or something like that instead of being an actual coach of a position group or
And
anything.
I don't see how either party hurts from that. I think it's good
No.
for these guys that were just let go because they at least are collecting some semblance of a paycheck in 2026. And the Lions, it helps them because they get some more familiar voices in the four walls of Allen Park. And we know as well as anybody that the Lions love their familiar voices and their familiar faces inside the building. So that would theoretically be a win-win for all involved. But I wanted to get your thoughts on that before too much
Yeah.
time gets removed from that. We're going to spend some time as we get deeper into the offseason starting to analyze more of the head coach and new coordinator hirings from around the league. We're not going to waste time getting into that right now. But what is going on right now, Phil, and literally this just shows how far off the beaten path my brain has been over these past week or so, that apparently, as you and I are recording this episode on Tuesday night, the 3rd of February, 2026, the Pro Bowl is going on. At what point in time, Phil, did they decide to start airing the Pro Bowl on a Tuesday?
I actually thought this was the Super Bowl media night. It was usually the Tuesday of the week here, and it's the most nondescript thing. It's cool. I've got it on right now, literally watching as I'm saying this. It's cool for some of these fans to get like photos and autographs as we're seeing some player sign something right here. Um, but your AFC quarterbacks are Joe Burrow, his backup Joe Flacco, and Shador Sanders. This is
Say
played
that last one for
in
me.
Shador Sanders,
Uh
right?
huh. Uh
The
huh.
guy who was drafted in the fifth round, sixth round. I don't know.
And who got
This
his
is
coach fired, and they were nowhere near a winning record. Got it.
this is not played in a stadium. It's not played in Hawaii. It's not played in Orlando. By optics, you would have no idea where this is being played. This looks like this is literally being played in a warehouse. This could be
Or at the
anywhere.
very best, like a Marriott ballroom or something like that.
I think this is literally a convention center somewhere out in the greater San Francisco area.
Okay,
So,
so all that said, have we
yeah.
officially reached the bottom of the chili pot with the whole Pro Bowl thing, All-Star thing in professional sports? Is this about as bad as it gets, and we need to find something else to do to kill some of that dead time, whether it's midway between the playoffs and the Super Bowl for the NFL or during the dog days of the seasons like the other three major professional sports?
Yeah, this is definitely the death knell of any sort of all-star game I've ever seen. Now, I mean, it is a flag football game, so I mean, something's taking place here. But currently, the score is 44 to 36 at the start of the third quarter. So,
Ooh, typical football score.
yep,
So
yep.
what's the solution then, Phil? How do you generate a product that you can entice casual fans to be able to want to tune into, to where the game would be put back to a more reasonable time slot instead of just being buried at the same time slot as NBA Tuesday on NBC?
That's the million-dollar question. That's something that I don't have a great solution for. I think the NFL, with it being, in my opinion, at least the most physical of all the four major sports, is at a distinct disadvantage with not trying to risk these players to injuries. They get a lot of bonus incentives by making this game, by getting voted into this, but by and large, this thing does not matter one iota. It's not like baseball where they've tried to add some playing advantage to being on the winning side of it. That game is also played mid-season. I don't want the NFL season broken up mid-season for a Pro Bowl or an All-Star game. Like that's not an answer either. So if it's going to be like this, where it's like the week of a super, I don't. This literally might be what we're going to get as good as this
What
at
about
this
something
point.
like this? And this is something I was just kind of thinking about. And again, this is just brainstorming. We're like, this is all cutting room floor BS that's about to come out of my mouth here. But just hear me out. What if you do something like this? And I understand that the NFL is still a job. And I know that you and I, when we get time off, we graciously accept it and we run away with it. And when players have off season, that's their version of time off or vacation time. I get that. And impeding upon that is not something that I take too likely, but hear me out here. So what if you take a all-star level roster and maybe trim it down to maybe instead of like the I don't know, 60 guys that are dubbed Pro Bowlers, maybe trim that down to more like 20 to 30. And then you take all those guys after the Super Bowl is over and then go on a multi city tour around the NFL geographical footprint, kind of like how the Tigers caravan worked all those years back, where we'd make traveling stops around Michigan. You'd have all these players and coaches and everything like that, and then they have all these different interactive activities and things like that, autograph opportunities and what have you. You're not putting the players in the line of fire to get themselves injured or anything like that, but you're giving these players the exposure for being all stars. You're giving your brand the exposure, and you're allowing the fans to have some level of an interactive opportunity to be able to get up close with some of these big time players, again, without putting them in harm's way. And again, this is cutting room floor stuff, but I think you're going to have to get some level of creativity that's kind of out of left field a little bit, because I do think we've kind of used up all the toothpaste as far as this whole all-star model that we've had over the years seems to run.
Yeah, and it's very, very hard to justify it for the NFL. I will say this, like, give some credence to that idea. Like, the NFL really is quite big into, the play 60 and like, having these players come out and be involved in the community. So, something like that's probably not a bad idea. I kind of feel like, this game being on ESPN, even if it's not going to have huge viewership or anything like that, or really do numbers, like I'm sure there is still some sort of TV event kind of element that they need, but
And I'm sure the
uh,
NFL is making money off of this, even though the eyeballs might not be on the screen and people aren't talking about it in droves. I'm sure the NFL is still turning a profit off of this broadcast somehow.
yeah, yeah.
Let's get to something that we know is going to turn a profit for the NFL film. That's going to be the Super Bowl. So, coming up this Sunday in the greater San Francisco area, it's probably about the same equivalent distance from Brighton, Michigan to Detroit, Michigan, is San Francisco to Santa Clara, the home of Super Bowl 60, featuring the Seattle Seahawks and the New England Patriots. Is that matchup that sends a shiver up your spine? I thought so. So here we are, Phil. We're coming up at Super Bowl 60. It is the Seahawks, it is the Patriots, 1 seed in the NFC versus 2 seed in the AFC. But nobody's talking about it. And I understand that the NFL, maybe not to the same extent as like the NBA, for instance, but the NFL is still a pretty stars driven league. And this is a matchup that's pretty devoid of stars, if you ask me. But it seems like if you're just turning off what Stephen A. Smith says, or what, all these talking heads on the ESPNs and the Foxes and what have you, if you just kind of listen to what the people out in the streets are saying, nobody's talking about this game. Anything
Yeah.
to that in your mind, Phil?
No, I think there's something to it. Let's do a roll call here. No Brady, obviously.
Yep.
He's retired. He's not calling the game. This is going to be on NBC Peacock. No Mahomes, no Josh Allen, no Joe Burrow, no Matt Stafford. Instead, you get the young upstart in Drake May, who, because the Patriots, even though they're the Patriots, actually weren't on a lot of national TV games. I don't think the buzz has really grown about him. Like, I don't think he's really quite a household name yet. I think even Caleb Williams is probably more of a household name with what
100%.
he accomplished in college, with him being the quarterback of the Chicago Bears and things like that. And then Sam Darnold, like, this is his first year with the Seahawks. I think unless you really follow the NFL, unless you really follow some of the guys that the Seahawks have on the roster, they don't have the household names either. Now, I think the Seahawks are going to have a lot of all pros following the Super Bowl, but it's really not one and the same. So I think by and large, like, this is very much a game that is struggling to have really any sort of storylines. Of course, we know the Patriots and Seahawks have played in the Super Bowl before, so that's probably the top storyline. But there's really not much else to go on outside of that.
So you mentioned Drake May a little bit, and I think you're right. If people don't watch North Carolina football from a couple of
Yeah.
years back, which I myself, guilty as charged, did, so I was at least well aware of what Drake May would bring to the NFL as a young quarterback, I fully recognize and understand that the majority of the NFL electorate out there doesn't fall in that same category. Sam Darnold, on the other hand, has kind of bounced back and forth between perennial loser to can't win big games, and probably just won the biggest game of his life a couple weeks ago for the chance to go to the Super Bowl. I want to pivot away from the Super Bowl for just a quick second, Phil. Speaking of Sam Darnold, did you hear about Justin Jefferson's comments over the weekend about Sam Darnold? And he basically threw his current quarterback, J.J. McCarthy, under a moving bus and essentially insinuated that he sure as hell wishes that Sam Darnold was still his quarterback because the season would have ended a whole heck of a lot differently.
It really is something, right? And that is basically following up where I think it was either same day, day after, day before, the Vikings actually fired their general manager, which came a little bit of a surprise.
Do you think that
Um,
had anything to do with the success of Sam Darnold?
to me, there has to be something more there because I don't think they did a terrible job of assembling that team.
You could
I think
argue
he's
a year
got
ago it was a Super Bowl level roster.
it was. I think you have a top 10 coach in place. I would say, really, other than the quarterback, like, what are they missing? I guess. I think they're one of the more complete rosters in the NFL, to be completely honest. Um, so very much a mystery as to what took place there, but there's got to be something a little bit more. Um, who knows? Maybe this is the first domino to fall, and Justin Jefferson actually gets dealt or something.
Maybe, could be. Obviously, this isn't a Vikings podcast, but I at least thought that was worth mentioning. But back to the Super Bowl. So here we have it: Seahawks, Patriots.
Yeah.
You mentioned that neither side has anything in the way of superstars, if you will, but Seattle probably has the edge as far as personnel goes.
Yeah.
What kind of game do you see taking place between these two teams? You thinking kind of a defensive slugfest, or do you think this might be one that one team's going to take the lead and pull away? You think it's going to be a pretty close match? Tell me how you anticipate Super Bowl 60 shaking out in terms of how the game itself is played.
We have two coaches that come from the defensive side of the ball. I think both defense have been pretty solid. Seattle's defense has been more impressive in my mind this year. I also think Seattle has the more explosive offense. Yet, to me, like it's not like a resounding, "Oh yeah, no, I think Seattle's going to win this game." Like for everything that we just talked about with Justin Jefferson, there's still this elephant in the room of can Sam Darnold win the big one? And I feel like this is very similar to a lot of the conversation that we seemingly always have about Jared Goff and some of the questions that
Yeah.
remain with him, whether it's winning the big one, whether it's, playing outside, these sort of questions just
Or the
don't
sum
go
of the
away.
parts being better than each individual piece.
Yeah.
It's
So listen, I think from the offensive line, the receivers, the running backs, to all the pieces that they have on the defense, like you should favor the Seattle Seahawks in this game. The familiarity with playing in San Francisco, um, but there's still like an element to what Mike Vrabel did in year one with a team that maybe doesn't know any better. That there's still like a little bit of that unknown that the Patriots have. So I think when push comes to shove, I think this is a game that you're looking at like a 21-17 kind of game. I don't think it's going to be the most low scoring game we've ever seen. I don't think it's going to be a high scoring affair either. I think both quarterbacks are going to have a couple plays they make that look good. I think they're going to make some mistakes too. So it just could be whoever wins that turnover battle wins this one.
And that's what I'm curious to see is because year in and year out, you've always got that Super Bowl veteran, whether it's been Tom Brady all those years, or recently you've had Mahomes who's played in numerous Super Bowls. You've had Jalen Hurts that's played in numerous Super Bowls. You've always had that consistent figure. You've got pretty much all Super Bowl virgins here between the guys and the coaching staff on the Seahawks and the guys and the coaching staff on the Patriots. I'm not discounting what Mike Vrabel did as a player, but let's be real, that was 20 to 25 years ago. He hasn't gone through this as a head coach yet. So it's going to be very different for all parties involved. And I think that kind of adds a little bit of appeal to me because I don't really know what kind of game we're going to get. I think you're right. I think that level of uncertainty kind of favors that lower scoring game. I don't see it being like that year where I think it was the Broncos and the was it the Broncos and the Seahawks where they won like 49-8 or something like that, and it just
Yeah.
wasn't it just wasn't a game at all. I don't think you're looking at anything quite like that because I don't think you have a monumentally better offense and a monumentally better defense on either side. And I think you and I both know from our years of watching him, Phil, I think Kenneth Walker is a phenomenal running back. I
Yeah.
think if you were to ask half the NFL who's the starting running back for the Seahawks, I probably wouldn't be able to tell you. We've, as Big Ten football fans, we've watched Jackson Smith and Jigba out over the years. Same thing if you ask half the NFL fans who's the leading receiver for the Seahawks, they probably wouldn't be able to tell you Jackson Smith and Jigba. So we're gonna kind of have to wait and see, and I think that kind of again adds to the appeal of the game of not having a clear cut direction or understanding of how this game's going to shake out. And for casual fans like you and I think that's kind of a win for us, don't you think?
Yeah, I think there is a little bit of an unpredictability factor that is appealing with this game that um I know Vegas is slightly favoring the Seahawks going into this one, but I think we're going to find out a lot about um, Sam Darnold and his legacy and his future as a starting quarterback in this league, with what he can potentially accomplish. I think we're looking at, are the Patriots just that franchise that, whether it's the ownership with Robert Kraft or just the things that they've got in place, that they're always going to be, in the hunt with things. Are they going to be like their baseball counterpart in Boston with the Red Sox, where a lot of times you could change up who the manager is, who the players are, but they're going to be consistent. They're going to be competitive year in and year out. So I think this is a game that I don't think we're truly going to know what's going to happen until maybe even deep into the fourth quarter of this one.
I don't like to sit here and just read lists because that's not very good podcast listening stuff. And people want to listen to somebody reading off, words in yellow pages. I'm sure there's a podcast for that. So we try to be a little bit more interesting than that. But I saw something online the other day that I found awfully interesting. And this is the opposing quarterbacks that each of these teams has faced this past season to kind of demonstrate the difficulty or not of the path it took to get to the Super Bowl. So I'm going to just kind of breeze through both these lists here real quickly. You want the Seahawks list first or the Patriots?
Let's do the Seahawks first.
So these are all the quarterbacks that the Seahawks have played over the course of the season. And if they played them twice, like for in division, let's say
Yeah.
I'm only going to read it off once. Brock Purdy, Aaron Rodgers, Spencer Rattler, Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield, Trevor Lawrence, C.J. Stroud, Jaden Daniels, Jacoby Brissett, Matt Stafford, Cam Ward, Max Brosmer, Kirk Cousins, Philip Rivers, and Bryce Young.
Okay.
Meanwhile, the Patriots, here's who they played up against over the course of the season. Geno Smith, Tua, Aaron Rodgers, Bryce Young, Josh Allen, Spencer Rattler, Cam Ward, Dylan Gabriel, Michael Penix Jr., Baker Mayfield, Justin Fields, Joe Flacco, Jackson Dart, Lamar Jackson, Brady Cook, Quinn Ewers, Justin Herbert, C.J. Stroud, and Jarrett Stidham.
Sorry, you had me at Brady Cook. Guy who was like Brady Quinn. What? Who,
You might as well be
what
Brady
team did
Quinn.
he come off the bench for?
He was the fourth string quarterback for the Jets at the end of the
Oh,
season. So,
oh man.
so it's almost like looking at it. Neither team had to face a super gauntlet to get to where they had to be today, and you could
Right.
even argue the Patriots probably had one of the easier paths in the history of the league, having to go up against a number one overall team in bad weather against a backup quarterback making his first career start, playing the Texans when C.J. Stroud was going through one of the worst turnover snaps of his career, and a Chargers team that was probably a little bit overmatched. That's a pretty quick and easy path to the Super Bowl, if you ask me.
Yeah, and I had you lead with the Seahawks, just thinking that they were the NFC team that path and who the quarterbacks were going to be a lot more competitive, but it really wasn't when you started listing some of those names.
So let's get to some of our favorites here. Let's get to some of our little fun prop bets here for the Super Bowl. First off, the Gatorade bath.
Uh,
Pick a color, any color,
um,
and I'll tell
let's
you what the odds
see.
are after you pick. So we're doing a
So
little reversal here.
both teams have blue. I feel like there's going to be a blue color, but I also feel like in these prop bets there's going to be a variant in blue. Is there like a what's the flavor? A glacier or something like that?
You talking like a
For a
blue
color?
almost, or
Yeah, yeah.
yep, blue is plus 260.
Okay. I'll
So
go
Phil
blue.
likes a blue to match the uniforms. I'm going to go a little off script here. I'm going to go red here at plus 1,000. I feel like we haven't had a red in a minute, so hey, in honor of Super Bowl 60, let's give that a whirl here. National anthem. Over under 119 and a half seconds. In case you're keeping track, that's over under just a sliver under 2 minutes.
And who is singing this by chance?
I don't know.
Ah,
Oh, Charlie Puth, I believe.
okay. I'll go under. I think
I
he'll
am
make
going
it
to
quick.
go under also. I think he's going to be in a hurry to get the show on the road here, and
Yeah.
we're going to go with a little bit quicker of a national anthem this time. I'm not going to pretend to know anything about Bad Bunny at all, so I'm going to skip over everything related to the halftime show, if you don't mind. Who is going to be the person, thing, idea, figure, what have you? What's going to be the first person or thing or figure that the Super Bowl MVP thanks in his post-game interview?
I'm gonna go teammates.
You
I'm gonna go
got it at
teammates.
plus 210.
Okay.
Again, before I looked at the odds here, I locked in on my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and that is minus 230. So
Mm.
not super great value there, but that is the absolute leader in the clubhouse. Okay, Phil, let's get down to the nitty gritty in this one here. Seahawks laying 4.5 as they take on the New England Patriots. How does this game shake out in your mind?
Well, I said like a 21-17. I could see it being a 20-17 game. So I think the Patriots will cover that. I think it will be a close game.
I will agree. I think the Seahawks are probably the better overall roster on paper. I think they're just as well coached as the Patriots are. I think they win the
Yeah.
game. I think that's doing a discredit to this group of guys that Mike Vrabel is going to be coaching on the other side. I think they're going to be right in it till the end, and I can definitely see this game coming down to a field goal at the very end or something like that, which again is good. We don't want to see blowouts. We've seen enough lopsided Super
Yeah.
Bowls over the years too. We want something that the game initially isn't generating the buzz like it normally would, but we also know full well that the Super Bowl year in and year out attracts the viewership. So you might as well take that viewership and keep the eyeballs locked in on the screen until the NBC broadcast cuts away to Winter Olympics coverage. And what better way to do that than a close game that ends in about a 3-point spread?
I want to know from prop bet standpoint, with this game being on NBC, how many are we going to get of Chris Collinsworth saying, now here's a guy, Sam Darnold, right?
Right?
Drake May, right?
Uh-huh.
How about Kenneth Walker? How about Jackson Smith and Jigba? You pick your guys on offense. I would put the over under at 4. I think we're getting over 4. Now here's a guy.
You know what? Maybe what we can do is one day between now and the time maybe the NFL draft gets here, if we get that bored, we can go and watch a post Super Bowl cut up or something, and then keep our own little tally to ourselves and just see how
There
you
we go.
did there, just for
There we go.
just for fun time's sake. I guess the only other question to ask is going to be: is Mike Tirico going to actually be on site up in the Levi Stadium press box alongside Chris Collinsworth? Or are they going to do like what CNN did with Jake Tapper all those years ago, where they would do the CNN hologram? Are they going to have virtual Tirico up in the press box with Collinsworth while real person Tirico is actually in Milan anchoring the Olympics coverage? Does anybody know what the logistics of that are yet?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think like Milan is the furthest place that you could possibly fly to, but you are on the west coast of the United
That's a
States.
long flight.
So you're adding, an additional what, probably 5 hours to get to New York via plane. So logistically, think about all the flights that Curb Street has done, doing all his stuff. There's a way to do it. I think he is actually going to be present, but I don't know when he's going to be getting sleep. I mean, on the plane, obviously.
Sleep? What's
But
that?
yeah,
Is
right.
what Tirico's, I'm sure, going to be asking. But
Yeah,
hey, that's why he gets paid the big bucks, right?
absolutely.
All right, Phil, that is all the time we have on this episode of Kneecaps for Breakfast. We are glad you were able to be flexible and join us a few days late for our pre-Super Bowl edition. Phil and I should be back on Tuesday to your devices of next week with the post-Super Bowl issue of Kneecaps. We hope you will join us for that and much more. For Phil Byrne across the way, Vince Progar saying good morning, go Lions, forward down the field, over and out.